it's crazy, you know, like, how would you take my name and not have the decency to ask me?
Most definitely. I got on the name like 10 years ago when that wasn't about that. It was about what I was gonna turn it into. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it is. Shout out to dude, whatever he doing, but I don't know.
Everybody knows him as Rick Ross, the rap star who spits about hustling and street life. But here's the wild part. He was never the real Rick Ross. The identity he built his empire on, snatched from an actual narcotic kingpin. And it gets crazier. This larger-than-life boss once wore a corrections officer uniform, clocking in as the very system he now raps about rebelling against.
Lines to make music and talk about 100 keys and you think it's fabricated. In your world, 100 keys may be a whole lot to you. Where I come from, that's a weekend of work.
But Ross didn't just borrow the name, he took it further. He embodied the image of a real kingpin in his music, so much so that the real Ricky Ross dragged him into court with a lawsuit. Talk about bold moves. So how did all this unfold? Let's rewind.
Are you a corrections officer?
I can tell you one thing.
Hello?
I'm the boss and the biggest dude in the game.
Before the shades, the beard, and the luxury Maybachs, Rick Ross was just William Leonard Roberts II. Born January 28, 1976 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and raised in Carroll City, Florida, his reality was nothing like the narcotic lord persona he'd later push. Back in the mid to late 90s, Roberts was working as a Florida corrections officer. He tried to bury it when whispers started, but official records later proved he served 18 months before stepping away. And when he jumped into rap full-time, he didn't roll out as a former CEO trying to flip his life. No, he reinvented himself completely. He became a larger-than-life character, an untouchable boss with global plugs, living in diamonds and designer, feared on the mic and in the streets. And the name he claimed? Rick Ross, the same name that would spark years of controversy and questions about who the real boss really is. The irony was heavy for those who knew the real story. But for most fans, it just sounded raw and powerful. Rick Ross's big break came in 2006 with his smash single Hustlin'. That hypnotic hook. Every day I'm hustling.
Like you online, who's working as a correctional officer. Is that or is that not Rick Ross in those pictures?
That was me in the photos.
Okay.
Most definitely.
Took over clubs, cars, and street corners overnight. Suddenly, Ross wasn't just another rapper. He was painted as a larger-than-life street mogul, moving bricks and running empires. The hype was so strong, it sparked a record label bidding war, and Jay-Z's Def Jam bagged him with a multi-million-dollar deal.
Maybe $1 million a day, $2 million a day sometimes, maybe more, you know, a few days. This wasn't every day though. Right. It was like we had days that.
That's how much you were taking in.
Right, in one day.
Ross didn't stop there. He doubled down on the fantasy. His debut album, Port of Miami, was stacked with imagery of smuggling operations, cartel ties, and living like a kingpin surrounded by luxury. But here's where the mask started to slip. In hip-hop, authenticity is the crown jewel, and in 2008, bombshell documents leaked proving Ross had actually worked as a corrections officer.
Yeah,
I didn't take days off. I worked.
like you genuinely loved it.
Oh, I really loved tennis. And not only loved it, but I felt it was my savior.
Yeah.
I felt that would be the way that I got out of the hood.
The internet lost its mind. Memes, forums, and diss tracks tore apart the image he worked so hard to sell. Fans were asking, was Rick Ross just acting like a narcotic lord while real hustlers lived that life for real? At first, Ross flat out denied it, but once the proof got too loud, he admitted to serving, though he still claimed his music was rooted in true street stories, even if they weren't his stories. And here's the twist. Controversy didn't crush him. Ross kept dropping platinum albums, built Maybach Music Group into a powerhouse, and linked with some of the biggest legends in rap. He wore the Rick Ross name like it was built for him. But the problem? That name wasn't his to begin with. The real man behind the name is Ricky Donald Ross, better known as Freeway Rick Ross. Born January 26, 1960 in Troop, Texas, and raised in Los Angeles, neighbors tagged him Freeway because his family lived by the 110 freeway. And when his empire exploded, he bought properties all along the 101, cementing the nickname that matched both the streets and his method. His childhood was rough, money was tight, so he hustled early. Mowing lawns, pumping gas, selling lemonade, anything to scrape up cash. School never grabbed him. Instead, he was shoplifting, scrapping in fights, and looking for something that could really lock in his focus. That spark came through basketball. Recruiters spotted his talent and even lined him up for a scholarship, until they discovered he couldn't read. Just like that, the dream vanished. Later, he would say the system failed him, and from that moment, his path took a turn. He left high school with no college options and no blueprint for the future.
24, I probably was doing $1 million every day, and 200,000 was profit. I'm selling drugs all around the country. I got a crew of 50 guys, and life was...
Then came the late 70s, early 80s. His first step into the streets wasn't some master plan. He flipped a tiny amount, bought for $50, sold for $100, and realized quick he wasn't chasing a high, he was chasing profits. He tested the product once, felt nothing, and decided staying clear-headed was his best advantage. That mindset became his weapon. One connection changed everything. A teacher from a community college upholstery class linked him into the game on a bigger level. Those small flips became large plays. When his first plug dried up, he slid over to Claudio Vivencio, also known as Ivan Arguez. But when Ivan got shot and paralyzed, Henry Corrales stepped in as the replacement. That was the magic of Freeway's rise. He ran it like a straight-up business, scaling and adapting. And then came the move that changed the empire forever, a direct pipeline to Oscar Danilo Blandon. Blandon wasn't just another supplier. He was sitting way up the ladder, supplying both Corrales and Arguelles, and now Freeway Ross himself. But Blandon wasn't just moving weight. He schooled Ross on how to boss up. He taught him about volume, price control, and keeping the product consistent. Later, after prison, Ross admitted, "The only mentors I had were narcotic dealers or slayers." And in that twisted world, Blandon was the best mentor he ever had. At one point, dropping kilos as low as $10,000. The prices he got were way below street level, and with purity you could count on. Add in the skill to flip powder into crack, and Freeway had the ultimate edge. By just 24 years old, he was already a millionaire, running a network that stretched far beyond Los Angeles. His reach spread into St. Louis, New Orleans, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Seattle, and plenty more cities. Prosecutors later claimed that between 1982 and 1989, his empire moved a staggering 3 metric tons, grossing nearly $900 million and netting close to $300 million. Some days were so wild that sales reportedly hit $3 million in a single day. And depending on which interview you believe,
Around USP with Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, As a Man Think, you know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and stuff like that, the millionaire.
annual totals might have even touched the billions. However you count it, the scale was unreal. He ran the whole thing like a corporation. Layers of sellers, distributors, and cooks. Thousands of people eating off the hustle, all illegal but run like clockwork. And here's what made him even harder to catch. He kept a low profile. No flashy cars, no diamond chains, no flexing in clubs. Just plain clothes, an older car, and a mindset to avoid beef. He'd tell people he wasn't out to make enemies, only money. When questioned later about the damage done to communities, he admitted some responsibility, but also claimed the bigger system was complicit, saying he only sold to folks already hooked. And if it wasn't him, someone else would have stepped right in. Still, the law wasn't blind. By 1985, the LA Sheriff's Department had him on their radar. By 87, they even created a special unit just for him, the Freeway Ricky Task Force. But corruption plagued the system. Cases collapsed thanks to planted evidence and police misconduct. Even so, the walls were closing in. In 1990, he got hit with his first big conviction in Cincinnati. He pled guilty and took a 10-year sentence. But then came a twist no one saw coming. A federal probe into corruption inside the very sheriff's office that hunted him flipped the situation. Freeway cut a deal, testified, and walked free in less than 5 years. Still, freedom didn't last long. By 1995, the DEA had a sting lined up, and the man setting him up, none other than his old supplier, Blandon. That's when things turned dark. Freeway's old supplier, now a paid federal informant, pulled him straight back in. The government actually supplied the product for the sting, and this time the case stuck hard. Since it was his third felony, the 3 strikes law hit him like a hammer. Life without parole. But prison didn't break him. It reshaped him. Locked away, he rebuilt his mind, teaching himself how to read in the prison library. By his own words, he was around 28 when literacy finally clicked. And once he had that power, he turned it on his own case. Digging through legal files, Ross discovered a massive mistake. His earlier convictions in Texas and Ohio should have counted as 1 strike, not 2. Under the law, that error changed everything. His lawyer checked, confirmed it, and moved forward. The result? His life sentence was cut to 20 years. After serving 14, Freeway Ricky Ross walked out of prison in 2009. But his name wasn't done being dragged through chaos. While he was locked up fighting for his life, he got pulled into a storm that shook the entire country. In 1996, investigative journalist Gary Webb dropped a bombshell with the Dark Alliance series in the San Jose Mercury News.
Even admit that he stole the name. He tells people that he invented the name. Like, how the f do you invent this name?
Webb followed Ross's supplier, Blandon, and traced him back to Nicaraguan Contra networks, alleging that U.S. power brokers knew illicit substance money was helping fund a secret battle effort. The reporting put Ross, Blandon, and Norwin Meneses at the center of a pipeline that poured Colombian cocaine into black neighborhoods in Los Angeles, igniting the crack epidemic. The reaction was explosive. Community leaders demanded answers, and traffic to the paper's website blew past 1 million hits per day, unheard of at the time. But then came the backlash. Heavyweights like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the LA Times tore into Webb's work, questioning sources and painting his reporting as flawed. Eventually, the Mercury News even retracted parts of the series, blaming editing and presentation mistakes. Official investigations by the CIA, Justice Department, and House Intelligence Committee all rejected Webb's claim of direct CIA ties to illicit substance trafficking.
I was trying to call him Big East and accidentally called him the Big Boss, and then somebody else called him Rick Ross. It went from Big Boss to Rick Ross. That's his story.
But here's the kicker. Even those same reports flagged shady detail. They noted how Blandon somehow secured permanent residency and how investigators seemed hesitant to dig into flights through El Pango Airport. So while the agencies denied involvement, to many readers the message was clear. The system was at least willing to look the other way. Supporters of Gary Webb argued his Dark Alliance reporting forced the government to admit far more than it ever wanted to. Even if the agencies denied the core allegation, cracks still showed. But for Webb himself, the price was devastating. His career collapsed, and by 2004, he was gone under tragic circumstances. For many, his passing became part of the bigger story, how dangerous it can be when a reporter digs too deep on sensitive ground, and how institutions close ranks when the truth gets too close. The real lesson? Freeway Ricky's rise was never about one man. It was about a massive supply chain that stretched far beyond any street corner hustle. Luckily for him, his sentence was cut, and by the time he walked out in 2009, he wasn't the same man who went in. Now literate, he pivoted his energy into legitimate lanes. He started speaking at schools, community centers, and re-entry programs, warning people that the so-called easy money of the illicit substance game is nothing but a trap disguised as opportunity. He became an outspoken voice for prison reform, blasting the way the system punishes certain neighborhoods way harder than others, and demanding better paths back for non-violent offenders. In 2014, he even dropped Freeway Rick Ross, the untold autobiography, earning industry recognition and making sure his story hit the page as well as the screen. Documentaries like Freeway, Cracking the System, and episodes of American Gangster put his life in the spotlight, and even the hit TV series Snowfall drew heavy inspiration from his empire. And Freeway didn't just tell stories, he stepped into new business, including the booming legal cannabis market. His message was clear. If America is going to cash in on weed, then people who once went to prison for the same hustle deserve a real chance to profit too. But while he was locked away, a new twist played out. Another man climbed to the top of rap stardom, using his name. When Freeway came home and saw Rick Ross headlining festivals, flexing in million-dollar videos, and rapping in the voice of a kingpin, he didn't see coincidence.
About 5 days before I got out of prison, I think that's what the judge said. She let them win on statute.
He saw his own identity, his story, his legend, plastered on somebody else's billboard. Before striking gold as Rick Ross, William Roberts was rapping under the name Teflon Da Don. His first real splash came in the early 2000s on Eric Sermon's compilation Def Squad Presents Eric Onassis. But by the mid-2000s, he ditched that alias and stepped into the game as Rick Ross, directly borrowing the identity of Freeway Ricky Ross. Now, Roberts has always tried to downplay that connection. He later claimed the name wasn't stolen, it was supposedly an evolution of his high school football nickname, Big Boss. and it just stuck. That's the story he's rolled with in interviews and even in court filings, where his legal team argued the rap name wasn't tied to the real Kingpin. It was just a nickname turned stage persona. But let's keep it real. Most people weren't buying that. Fans, critics, and cultural voices all pointed out the obvious. Freeway Rick Ross's story was legendary by then. His name was tied to Gary Webb's Dark Alliance expose, a major symbol of the crack era and the underground illicit substance economy. Roberts choosing that exact name didn't feel like coincidence. It felt intentional, a calculated grab at an already powerful legacy. And it wasn't just the name. Roberts built a whole persona around the image. His breakout 2006 hit Hustlin' was packed with lines about moving massive weight, stacking millions, and running the streets like a true boss. That character mirrored Freeway Rick Ross's real-life empire, almost point for point, large-scale distribution, underworld plugs, and insane profits. The similarities weren't hidden either. They ran through his lyrics, his visuals, and his entire brand. But when the world learned Roberts had actually been a corrections officer, the contradiction hit like a punch. How could a man who once wore the badge now rap like a cartel overlord? The dissonance was so strong that even Joe Rogan, after hosting Freeway Rick Ross, tore into Roberts' explanation, calling the big boss became Rick Ross' story straight up the dumbest thing he'd ever heard. Joe Rogan wasn't the only one calling it out. He straight up asked how someone could accidentally create a name that matched a notorious illicit substance figure so perfectly. And the truth is, even Roberts himself admitted Freeway's story fascinated him. He never flat out confessed to stealing the identity, but he did acknowledge that the real Rick Ross's saga pulled him in. That fascination, mixed with the name, the lyrics, and the imagery, created the larger-than-life persona he built his career on. But for Freeway, this wasn't some random coincidence, it was deeply personal. He blasted the rapper saying, "Rick Ross used my whole name and he probably gained the most stardom out of everybody." It just makes you feel like, what's with this guy? Why can't this guy just come out and say what I am and what I do? And then the way he raps about selling narcotics and he never sold narcotics. That cut deep because anyone who knew Freeway's legacy understood. He didn't just sell narcotics. He ran an empire in the 80s, moving millions a day at his peak. The lifestyle the rapper bragged about in songs, Freeway had actually lived it. And the similarities didn't stop at the name. Roberts leaned into the look, bald head, full beard, heavy-set build. All of it became central to his boss aesthetic in hip-hop. Fans and critics caught the parallels instantly. And whether it was intentional or not, it made separating the rapper's image from the real narcotic kingpin nearly impossible. Then there was the persona itself. The booming voice, the cold swagger, the "I run this game" energy in every track. Roberts' lyrics about moving kilos, stacking millions, and ruling an empire didn't sound like fantasy. They sounded like Freeway Rick Ross's biography put on wax. Only difference? One man lived it, the other performed it. With all these overlaps, it was only a matter of time before Freeway made his move. And in June 2010, he took it to court, deciding it was time to officially make his stand against the man who built a rap empire off his name. Barely a year after stepping out of prison, Freeway Rick Ross came out swinging, filing a $10 million lawsuit in federal court. And he didn't just target William Leonard Roberts II, also known as rapper Rick Ross. He went for the whole machine. Def Jam Records, Universal Music Group, and even Jay-Z himself, since Hov was president of Def Jam when Roberts signed. The claim? That Roberts and his team were cashing in on Freeway's name and story, flipping his real-life identity into a rap brand, without permission. But that first lawsuit fizzled quick. In July 2010, a federal judge tossed it, ruling that the matter fell under California state law since it involved publicity rights. To make things worse, the judge hinted that Freeway's delay in filing, knowing Roberts had been using the name since at least 2006, hurt his case. And right on cue, Roberts dropped his Teflon Don album just days later, on July 20th, 2010, flexing harder than ever. Still, Freeway wasn't backing down. In 2011, he refiled in California's Superior Court, this time anchoring the case in the state's rights of publicity laws. He widened the net too, pulling Warner Brothers Records into the fight along with Universal and Def Jam. A trial was set for early 2012, but once again the case collapsed, this time dismissed under the statute of limitations and the single publication rule, which basically said he should have filed sooner. But Freeway wasn't done swinging yet. He appealed. By December 2013, the California Court of Appeals weighed in with the final decision. And this time, the gavel dropped in Roberts' favor. The The court ruled that rapper Rick Ross could legally keep the name under First Amendment protection. Judge Roger Boren made it plain. Yes, Roberts' persona borrowed from Freeway Rick's life, taking his name, his aesthetic, even pieces of his legend. But those details were raw materials for creating a new artistic identity. In the court's eyes, Roberts had transformed it into his own brand. As Judge Boren wrote, "We recognize that Roberts' work, his music and persona as a rap musician, relies to some extent on plaintiff's name and persona. But in the end, Roberts' choice to perform as Rick Ross, brag about wealth, and rap about a kingpin lifestyle was protected as art." The judge made it clear, Freeway's name and legacy might have been the raw materials behind Roberts' music career, but they weren't the full sum of his work. So legally, rapper Rick Ross walked away with the win. But here's the truth. Just because the court ruled in his favor doesn't erase where that name came from, or the heavy inspiration pulled straight from Freeway's life. And that's what fans still debate to this day. If Roberts had just come clean from the start about borrowing the name and about his past as a corrections officer, instead of hiding behind shaky excuses, he might have earned a little more respect in the process. So what do you think? Did rapper Rick Ross steal an identity or just flip it into art? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. And I'll catch you on the next one.